Hello and welcome to This Is Us. I'm Becca King-Reed. This week we're at the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. Beautiful but bizarre, it's one of the Bay Area's most interesting places. There are acres of gorgeous gardens, staircases and doors that lead to nowhere, and a fortune in Tiffany windows. Hopefully we'll shed some light on the mystery surrounding Sarah Winchester, who kept carpenters working non-stop for 38 years building this lavish mansion. We're in the Firearms Museum with General Manager Shozo Kagashima. Shozo, tell us the significance of this impressive collection.
Well, we have one of the largest collections of Winchester rifles on the West Coast. We have everything from the Henry rifle all the way up through the commemorative series, which were manufactured in the 1990s.
Now, they call it the gun that won the West. Why was that?
Well, the 1873 was named the gun that won the West. It was the most popular rifle of its time, and it really revolutionized, the Winchester repeater really revolutionized the firearms industry, because up until then, everything was a single shot. So you had to load a bullet, shoot, expend the old cartridge, and reload another one. It's very time consuming. And the Winchester repeater actually allowed you to chamber multiple bullets and fire in rapid succession.
And it was the gun of choice of some celebrity riflemen.
It was Buffalo Bill Cody, Annie Oakley, and even President Theodore Roosevelt were fans of the Winchester repeater.
Now, because it was so popular, there was a lot of money involved with the Winchester rifle, correct?
Exactly. Mrs. Winchester, after the death of her husband, was earning approximately $1,000 a day just from the royalties of the Winchester stock. And then after the death of her mother-in-law, she inherited another $20 million. And that's really what kept her building this house.
Wow. She also was a great philanthropist. Can you tell us a little about that? She
was. She donated quite a bit of her fortune. One of her favorite charities was the New Haven General Hospital, where she actually built the William Winchester Tuberculosis Annex. And then she also donated to local charities, the Red Cross, the children's shelters, but she did it anonymously.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait to get a look at this house. And I understand, Shozo, that this is one of the largest rooms.
It is, and this is the bedroom, one of 40 bedrooms, and this is the bedroom Mrs. Winchester passed away on September 5th, 1922.
And it's a fabulous room. It really is. Tell us about this wall covering.
This is what's called Lincrusta Walton wall covering, and it's made of compressed wood pulp and cork laminated in linseed oil. It's rolled out and then glued to the walls and then painted, and it's very durable, and the wall covering here has actually lasted over 100 years.
It's amazingly beautiful. Now, she had a very sophisticated design palette going here. What was her life like on the East Coast before she came to farm country?
Well, Mrs. Winchester was very affluent, had a very affluent life prior to her husband passing away, and so she was in the social circles, and she was very well educated. So she knew the finest materials and knew what was around the world. So she could get the finest materials for her own house.
Now, she left when her husband passed away, is that correct?
Right. After the death of her husband, she was traveling the East Coast, and that's when it said that she came across a medium in Boston who told Mrs. Winchester that the death of her husband and daughter were caused by the spirits of all those people killed by the Winchester rifle, and that the only way to appease the spirits was by building a house continuously, never to complete it. So she moved out to California in 1884. She found an 8-room farmhouse, and then she started building. She built 24 hours a day for 38 years until she passed away September 5th.
Oh my gosh. And she built, and we'll see some of the other fabulous rooms, including that magnificent ballroom that she built. And she was actually a musician, is that right?
It is. She was an accomplished musician. She played the piano, the organ, and the violin.
Well, that was really something. Shozo and I are now in the magnificent grand ballroom of the Winchester Mystery House. And Shozo, this place is paneled from ceiling to floor, and I understand no nails were used.
Exactly. Mrs. Winchester, when she built this room, wanted the best acoustic and sound quality for her music. And so what she did was she used very few nails, but used wood pegs, wedges, and glue for the construction of this room.
Now, she loved music and was a musician herself. How many big events did she hold in this room?
We're not aware of any events. Mrs. Winchester was pretty much here on her own, with the exception of her niece and maybe her sisters, but very few other guests.
She had some other innovations as well beyond the no-nails technique of building. Tell us a little about the cistern system.
Well, the cistern system really was for the runoff of the water from the rains. The house being as large as it is, there's a lot of miles and miles of gutters and drainage systems. So as she kept building and building, a lot of these drains and gutters became part of the inside of the house. And so she has cistern systems throughout the middle of the house that actually collect all the water and then distribute the water someplace else where we don't know.
And there's another thing we don't know. I understand that there was a wine cellar that has disappeared.
There's a story that there was a wine cellar. Mrs. Winchester had a wine cellar, but one day when she was going down, she saw a hand imprint which was not her own. So she was terrified that it was a symbol or a spirit being, and so she had it closed off and never reused again. Whether that exists, we don't know. We've never seen it. The closest thing we have is a root cellar.
So another great mystery to solve.
Exactly.
Well, we don't want to leave without a peek inside the $25,000 storeroom. What is stored in here?
Well, what we have today is a lot of the stained glass windows and doors that Mrs. Winchester had purchased had either used at one point in time or had never had a chance to use because of her death in 1922. And everything was valued at the time of her death at approximately $25,000.
So these are pretty nice building materials. Tell us a little about them.
Well, they are the finest, and Mrs. Winchester purchased these doors and windows through Tiffany's, and a lot of them originated in Belgium and Austria.
And what are they made? It's not stained glass, as you would guess.
Well, they're using jewels, a lot of jewels and leaded glass, leaded bead, and we have the one window designed by Mrs. Winchester, which has the 13 blue and amber stones, as well as the spiderweb design.
And it is fabulous. And there's also a lovely window over here. It's like the double doors. Tell us a little about those.
Exactly. This is a door that Mrs. Winchester never had a chance to use, but it has the Belgium optical glass in the center, and around the oval edge, it's called a zipper cut, which gives a nice beaded pattern around the edge.
It really is something to see. And finally, there's quite a bit of that wonderful wall covering that we saw upstairs. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's the Lincrusta Walton wall covering that you see throughout the house, and these are the actual rolls that Mrs. Winchester had purchased. And so if we have some restoration work that needs to be done, we can come through, and if we find the match of the pattern, we can go ahead and use that. If not, we have to go out and make a mold out of plaster and then use that to make a patch out of.
Now, what would this room full of fabulous windows and interesting wallpaper be worth in today's market?
Well, $25,000 back in 1922, it's really hard to put a value on it today. A lot of it is irreplaceable. These are unique, one-of-a-kind pieces of artwork. Try to put a value on it, really, it's impossible.
So it's priceless.
It is priceless.
Well, thank you for letting us into your priceless palace. We've had a blast here today.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm glad you had a chance to walk through the Winchester Mystery House yourself.
I hope you've had a great time as well. From all of us at This Is Us, I'm Becca King Reed from the Winchester Mystery House, saying so long.